Today I'm going to talk about sensing and intuition. So, how do you know if you're a sensor or an intuitive? Sensing and intuition are perceiving functions, which means they are all about how we perceive things, so how we become aware of things, and basically how we process information. And sensing is focused on either taking in information or processing it through your senses mainly, and intuition is about taking in information or processing it with your intuition. Now, I have to say one thing is that how much you relate to either the stuff about sensors or intuitives depends on whether your dominant function is intuition or sensing, or if intuition and sensing are your middle two functions. Because if they are your middle two functions, you might relate to both sides, to both intuition and sensing a lot. So these differences, when you look at people and how they live their life, there's this thing where intuitives are usually very interested in abstract information. They usually will have the patience and the energy to think or talk about concepts and abstract stuff, so theory, for a long time, even if it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with their actual real life or with anything they have seen before. If it's entirely new and if it's something totally abstract, then they will naturally be more interested in that than sensors, and also have the energy to think about it or talk about it for a long time without getting tired. So it's not true that sensors cannot understand difficult concepts or stuff like that, things that are too complicated or abstract. It's just that they have less interest in it and it takes them longer to understand it. So it takes them more effort, and it's the other way around with sensory stuff. So, for example, intuitives might get really easily tired when they are asked to do a lot of stuff that has to do with the sensory. Since intuition is not about the sensory, they will be a bit less comfortable with a lot of sensory stimuli. So sensors, whenever they do something, they like it to be having to interact with the world around them with their senses. And when an intuitive is doing something, they don't necessarily need to be interacting with their environment because they're interested in this concept or in this idea. So what you will see, for example, if you would compare an extroverted sensor with an extroverted intuitive, the extroverted sensor might be the person who talks a lot and really wants to talk about concepts and ideas. But the extroverted sensor might be the person who always wants to go to parties or always likes to be active and do sports and likes to be in different places a lot or likes to do things with their hands. And the extroverted intuitive, for them it's more about the idea that interests them, and that's the thing that motivates them. Whereas for the extroverted sensor, what motivates them is just being active and engaging with their environment. So they get energy from different things. And intuition is focused on the future most of the time because intuition is often focused on possibilities. Extroverted intuition is focused a lot on many possibilities at the same time. So when an extrovert intuitive looks at the world, they see all these kind of possibilities, and usually their interest also switches a lot between interests. So they might be like, oh, now I'm interested in this possibility, and then the next day they're interested in another possibility. But for them it seems almost limitless. The problem though is that because the idea is the thing that excites them, they might not always, when they engage in a project, might not always finish it because they're so much more interested in the idea itself than in actually implementing it into the real world, as intuition is very connected to the idea itself and not necessarily to the real world or, to the physical world. So yeah, extrovert intuitives focused on a lot of possibilities. Introverted intuition is usually focused on a limited small amount of possibilities that the person is interested in at the moment, because intuition, as all introverted functions, likes to narrow things down a bit more, and it likes to focus on, what's the possibility that's either most likely to happen or that I'm most interested in. But it's also focused on possibilities too, and theories and meanings. So, especially introverted intuitives, for them, when they look at the world, they might see a landscape of meanings, because they always want to look at the meaning behind something rather than the thing itself. So that's why intuitives are generally pretty future focused, because they're so focused on possibilities and things that aren't real but that could potentially become real or be implemented in the future. And then sensors are more present focused, though introverted sensors can be a bit more past focused, because they're looking at their own personal storage of sensing memories, basically. So they use sensing when they're being introverted, which means that they are often looking at memories and what these mean to them. And extroverted sensors usually are very present. And when I say memories, it's not just memories of events in their life, it's also just memories about theory, for example. It might be something they read in a book, it can be anything, as long as it's a real memory. So some kind of facts, that they actually read maybe or heard. So then intuitives are often said to be very creative, but it's not that sensors cannot be creative. It's just, the thing is that sensors, whenever they are being creative, it's usually focused more on actual experiences that they had, more than an intuitive would be focused on. So for example, if a sensor were to write a song, it's more likely to be about real things in their life, and it will probably be a bit more detailed. But an intuitive might write a song that might have lyrics using a lot of metaphors, maybe, and it will be less concrete. So I also have this thing with just kind of a short overview. So how you might describe these differences with some keywords. It's about sensors being grounded and realist, so they are often very grounded in reality. They are usually very focused on their daily life and living that, and the intuitives are more of the dreamers and idealists. They might seem a bit lost in thought or lost in some kind of crazy idea that sensors might hear and be like, yeah, this idea is pretty unrealistic. But intuitives have intuition that's so strongly developed that they can actually have ideas that might seem unrealistic to sensors, even though they know themselves that it is realistic, because their intuition has figured out some kind of realistic possibility. They are really good at coming up with new ideas, especially just new theories and stuff, which is why they're often innovators, whereas sensors are focused more on using and working with what's already there, what's already given to them. Sensors are more present, and intuitives are more lost in ideas. So even introverted sensors, even though they're introverts, what they are thinking about in their head is usually grounded in reality and kind of just things that have to do with their daily life. So because they're thinking about that in their head, they seem more grounded than intuitive introverts do. Intuitive introverts, when they are being introverted, are usually a bit more focused on very imaginative, maybe random stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do with their daily life. It can be anything. So they will seem less grounded than introverts who are also sensors. And then sensors are very strong at being practical. So they know how to handle the world around them. Intuitives, they have this ability, as I already said, they have this ability to think about concepts for a long time. But the cost of this, that they have the power to do this, is that they are usually less practical. Sensors are better at remembering exact facts. And intuitives are better at understanding concepts. So an intuitive will prefer to look at the whole and a concept and be interested in that. And for example, when they remember something, they might forget the details because to them those details are very irrelevant because it's about the whole picture. Then for a sensor, they might actually remember small details. Sensors are often, they value tradition more usually than intuitives because they don't like to imagine how things could be different, how things could change, They like to just work with what they're used to, and they usually also have some kind of sentimental value to certain traditions. Of course, it can be that they value certain traditions and not others, but in general, they value tradition more than intuitives. Whereas intuitives might often be so focused on new possibilities that they see this possibility and then they're just like, well, if this is possible, then why would we continue doing this tradition when we can do something better, And sensors, they seek to live life to its fullest through experiences. So sensors are usually very focused on experiencing life. So they just want to experience everything life has to offer. And of course it depends, extroverted sensors will be way more open to new experiences than introverted sensors. But in general, it's still about these experiences, these real life experiences that they have been through that mean something to them. And they just want to gather these experiences. Whereas for intuitives, they usually seek some kind of deeper purpose and meaning in their life. So intuitives can easily get bored when they don't have some kind of goal to work towards, or when they can't find a deeper meaning to what they're doing. So in that case, a sensor might just be like, why are you taking life so seriously? Why does everything need to have a meaning? Just live it, just live your life. And then sensors could be criticized for just not understanding things deeply enough, being called dumb. So these are very different approaches to life, different strengths, and it's important to realize that both are needed. Both are needed to have this world function. So yeah, with sensing and intuition, it's this thing where it's a difference between people that can lead to a lot of miscommunication and misunderstandings. I think that's one of the reasons why personality type is just something that's very useful in order to understand each other better and respect each other and not look down on one another for being different and having different preferences. Understanding each other can just really help to not want to change each other and to understand that everyone has their own strengths and that all of these strengths are useful. So that was what I wanted to say about sensing and intuition, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.